let's jump in to talk about price a little bit. I try to stay away from price action talk on this show for the most part, but this is some dramatic price action right now, and I think there's a lot of people who are feeling nervous out there. It's easier for those of us who have a lower cost basis, have been around for a long time, to sort of stomach these. Plus, we've been through them, but we also know how hard it can be when it's your first time kind of seeing this volatility. You can be told that they expect a lot of volatility. I could be expecting a lot of volatility, but that's completely different than experiencing that volatility. So let's just talk for a minute about price action here and where we might go and what we could expect. First one I want to ask about price is, what would happen if Bitcoin's price just nuked below 20K, that all-time high that held on for years? Where do you think that hodl floor is? Where's the leverage-free Bitcoin believer price base? Parker, you want to take this one?
Oh man, that's a hard one out of the gates to. I think one of the best things about Bitcoiners is that they are great at catching falling knives. The market, kind of when Bitcoin has volatility, particularly to the downside, when it hits critical levels, then liquidity forms very quickly. I personally don't expect that we'll go back through that level, just given how many weekends have already been shaken out, and really thinking about Bitcoin, given its supply can't be manipulated and its price can't be manipulated over a longer period of times because of that fact, that kind of being in this kind of sideways trajectory effectively for 18 months and having kind of two now 3 periods where it's really kind of come back to this 30,000 level. I think from a technical perspective, each time I think people probably would have expected that when it hit 30K, that there'd be a big technical bubble there. At least I think people expected that back this time last year when it retraced from 60 to 30 the first time, and it really didn't. There was strong support. Then back in January the same, and now we're seeing a lot of the same. So I don't think that other than psychological, that might be a significant level, but I don't think the psychology of it really dictates whether it's actually also a technical level that would cause forced deleveraging. There's nothing that I see in the market, but I'm not extremely close to kind of following technicals, is that there's if there was a lot of leverage that was struck at like 20K, that it would create a technical move. But I don't think that there's a reason to believe that that's a magical level, other than people thinking that it's psychologically a barrier, which in my view doesn't actually drive big technical moves.
Makes sense. Lyn?
So I don't have a specific price level in mind, but basically one thing worth pointing out is that if you look at the historical, the PMI cycle, the Purchasing Managers Index, that's basically a measure of U.S. economic growth, and you can apply it to multiple countries around the world. And if you look at it over the long term, it looks like a sine wave. It kind of goes up and down every 3 years or so. And historically, Bitcoin has done very well in rising PMI environments. Economic growth is accelerating, and it's done rather poorly in economic decelerating environments. It's still a fairly new asset. It's volatile. And so even though some people don't treat it that way, the broad markets treat it like a risk-on asset, and risk-on assets tend to do poorly in that declining PMI environment. Now, historically, Bitcoin has bottomed before PMI bottoms. And so, we're kind of seeing an event here that looks a lot like what happened in late 2018, which was the last time we were in kind of the start of a declining PMI environment. And one thing I was theorizing about in the past few weeks was, if something happens to Luna, and I know we'll talk about this later in the show, but if something happens to Luna and they have to sell Bitcoin into a weak market, that could mark a capitulation. And unfortunately, that's what we did see. And so, it's hard to get more kind of messy than we are right now, but there are certainly other things that can be had. I mean, basically, I think right now we're in the stage where market participants have to go around and shake all the pegs and check, to see how far the contagion is spread in the broader, kind of crypto Ponzi industry, and get kind of clear out all the mess there. Now, I think longer term, a lot of that's going to bleed out more slowly, but I think they have to poke around and find out anything else that might kind of, erupt kind of in more volatility. So, I think there's a lot of buying pressure throughout the 20,000 and 20 to $30,000 range. I don't try to make a prediction about where like a quick wick price wick is going to go. But I think, right now we're seeing a lot of conditions that do look pretty similar to what we saw in the massacre of late 2018.